Now, the National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT, is calling for a 15% salary increment ahead of the May Day celebration to deal with the current economic hardships, which it says is hitting hard at the Ghanaian teacher. President of NAGRAT, Angel Carbonu, who expressed disappointment with government's recent announcement of a wage freeze for the next 3 years, says a substantial increase in the salaries of workers will help cushion workers from the current economic pressure.
Of NAGRAT, Angel Kwabonu, who speaks for the group, indicates the current economic situation of the Ghanaian teacher is in a bad state. The NAGRAT president says the group is having to celebrate this year's May Day in the midst of a sudden escalation of prices of goods and services, adding this kind of hardship is what usually breeds corruption.
The economic situation is hitting hard on the Ghanaian worker, and indeed on the Ghanaian teacher. An immediate remedy ought to be found to ameliorate the situation we find ourselves in. A bag of cement, which we bought for 34 Ghana cedis last year this time, is now going for 50 Ghana cedis. In fact, building materials have had their prices generally gone up. Not to talk about food items that we buy in the markets on daily basis. The numerous fuel price increases have also contributed to the general price increases that have affected Ghanaian workers in general and teachers in particular.
Mr. Kabonu says, as teachers, the situation at their workplaces is of great concern to them, explaining why the numerous challenges facing the free SHS policy calls for a relook at the system. The only way to achieve that, he says, is through a stakeholder engagement.
Time has come for the government to constitute a stakeholder platform to analyze and review the free senior high school policy so as to improve the scheme. Apart from feeding fees, there are other fees on the bill that cater for the day-to-day running of our schools. There are challenges with the supply from buffer stock. We call for a relook at the role of buffer stock in supplying food items to our schools. We also have challenges with the payment of electricity for especially schools that are on prepaid meters, because those schools do not have difficulty in getting the money to pay for the government to reimburse. And as we speak, government is in arrears in paying back to the schools monies that they have used for their prepaid.
NAGRAT, whilst recognizing the importance of information technology in our various schools, also wants the Ministry of Education and the Ghana Education Service to consciously remove all obstacles in the use and application of ICT in our schools.
Now, tomorrow is the 1st of May, and across the world, the day is being observed to recognize the role workers play in the development of the world and growth of local economies. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19 protocols, workers cannot gather in their large numbers to celebrate with the hustle and bustle that comes with it. Now, that notwithstanding, the day will be observed at the regional level with focus on economic recovery in the era of a global pandemic. This afternoon, we focus on job losses, salary cuts, general hardships for Ghanaian workers, and unfriendly labor practices at our workplaces. General Secretary of the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, ICU, Mr. Solomon Kote, is my guest. Also joining us on Zoom is the Executive Secretary of the National Labour Commission, Ofosu Asamoah. We often hear from that outfit during labor agitation. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
I hope I have both of you on the Zoom call. If you can unmute your microphones. I'll start with you, Mr. Kote. what exactly would you say is the current state of the Ghanaian worker?
Well, it's in the midst of a real difficulty, a situation that I've had a backlog running almost 3 years plus, no proper salary reviews, because we suffered something in 2019, reared its ugly head in 2020, and in 2021, the indicators are that we're really going through very severe hardship. We think the government of the day will also be giving account as to how they have allowed things to go the manner that it has gone. At the moment, we as Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, we may want to say that government should help us to identify why up to now, 7 months running, we've not been able to establish the minimum wage, because Tripartite is in meeting, but the two social partners are all pointing fingers at government. The government says are bringing a paper, it has not been able to do so. Meanwhile, life is still ongoing. So we will be grateful once we are seeing the Executive Secretary of the Commission that maybe he will help us to know why, for the first time in 5 years, there has been a delay in establishing the minimum wage.
Right. Well, at this point, since it doesn't appear that government has any intention of formally and officially promoting the idea of an increase in wages, what exactly is the advice to the people in your sector? Would you advise them to agitate and put pressure on government, or is there a general understanding of the current situation not being normal times?
Well, I'll say we have done a bit well to let our members appreciate that we came to a verge where we were almost losing our jobs, especially when the lockdown came and suddenly all our hotels and restaurants had to shut down, with over 5,000 workers being affected in one employ. And then again, we noticed loss of wages. We noticed percentage cuts in salaries. We also noticed the employers having their weak ends and nothing they could do. Hence, if you watch carefully, we are urging all employees to join hands with the employers to make sure that whatever necessary sacrifice we have to undertake to bring our businesses back and to sustain what is available, unconditionally, we give ourselves up to it. Other than that, when the job is gone, we are also gone. So this is our effort. And we can say with every confidence that workers are showing understanding in this regard, because we cannot eat our cake and have it. We cannot get to a point where demand without balancing ourselves with what is feasible. And this is where we commend the Ghanaian worker for showing appreciation to the kind of sacrifice that all the stakeholders need to get our jobs right.
Is that what you would say is worth celebrating this year? Sacrifice? Or is there more that Ghanaian labor can beat their chest about?
Well, what we can say is that in the midst of erratic power supply, employers have had to take some major decisions, to affect, increases in salary here and there. We are saying in the midst of this economic recovery in the global pandemic that all workers should appreciate the fact that work is only available if the employer is on his feet, and work is gone if the employer has nothing to offer. Like we have added our voice to the textiles industry, where they are pleading with government that, can you spare us another VAT? I should say yes, because we wrote to appeal for that. And they are saying they are not out of the woods yet. So we will not be in a position where losses are being made, and yet we will come and say, give us additional income. We will not be able to do that. And therefore, we are urging workers not to start any agitation now, saying that will affect our fortunes in getting the little that is possible for us to manage before the worst happens.
Mm. Right, let me bring in Mr. Fosu Asamoah. Now, it's difficult to to predict the future for labor in Ghana this year, but we do know that everything is more expensive, from transportation to telecommunications to accommodation to food. It seems the only thing that has gone down in price is face masks. But labor is not expecting to go up in value. We're not expecting, pay rises in the coming year. As an institution that, overlooks some of these issues when they come up, what are your thoughts on how labor should react to this rather severe belt tightening that seems to be ahead of us all?
Thank you, and to your listeners and your watchers, show as well. I must say that Mr. Kuti, I think, said it all, that they will urge their members, and for that matter, the labor front to be a little accommodative as they have been over the period in respect of what the government and the employers should be doing for them. We are all aware, just as is mentioned, that with the advent of COVID, most companies and establishments, they either have to shut down, may have gone down. So apart from the fact that you may not get an increase, whatever they may have invested or expected by way of profit has also gone down. We are aware of the hospitality industries, where most of them had to close down, virtually shut down. People had to reduce numbers, and if you come to those in the discos, the bar operators, and so on, virtually, and even for us, even in my own office, we have to reduce the numbers. We go close for about a month. We receive between 80 to 120 a month. So that if we're closing down in a month, you see that the number of cases we would have dealt with within the month will not be dealt with. And for that matter, generally, production has gone down everywhere, both in the service sector, in the industrial sector, and everywhere. So I think the labor should be a little accommodative of what they expect from government and the employers.
Now, Mr. Ofosu-Asamoah, your commission has a very central role to play in resolving issues when they come up, and there have been quite a lot of issues recently. We've heard from nurses agitating, teachers have been agitating as well. ECG recently calling for, among other things, the removal of their boss. Several issues have come up recently, and the message from the NLC is almost invariable: go back to the negotiating table. There are some who feel that there is so much more that the Commission could be doing to move issues towards amicable solutions. But it appears that the only thing that we hear from you is a call for people to return to the process when the process has broken down. How do you respond to that criticism?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Ofosu-Asamoah?
Hello?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me now.
I'm actually not hearing you.
Hello?
I'm not hearing you.
Right, okay. We're going to try and clean up that connection and get more from Mr. Ofosu-Asamoah. But in the meantime, let's speak to our other guest. And I mean, you seem optimistic in spite of the fact that things are not quite looking as promising as they were for workers this year, Mr. Solomon Kute. Now, for your union, a lot of what you do depends on the strength of the economy. A lot of your success comes from the strength of the economy. How do you assess that, and do you foresee that we are on a path of recovery that will result in better conditions for those who work in the commercial sectors, at least in the coming year?
Thank you. I will say boldly that the experts have made us aware that the COVID had come to stay. And once it has come to stay, we need also strongly to think outside the box and get something doing. If we don't break the cycle and we say because of COVID we will remain where we are, that will not help us. Again, we are hearing messages from India and Brazil, how the COVID has mutated again and the death toll is rising higher and higher. For us in ICU, we think it's about time that with united purpose, the employer, the employee, and for that matter, government to a large extent, should be able to devise a means to be able to live our lives this new normal will break one day, but not in the immediate near future. From what we are reading from other economies in other countries, it is better we get a posture and a position to actually deal with this pandemic situation. Hence, we have taken the position to say a time of collaboration is needed now than ever. A time where we will sacrifice a little here, sacrifice a little there, as I've said earlier. Anything short of that, we are not in normal times for us to be demanding normal things. As my brother from the National Labour Commission said, production is out of target, revenues are out of target, and things are not really normal where we could say we have been able to achieve or overachieve or give us this. But I will pause here and say some employers have been very excellent in the midst of this COVID. Even though they are using skeletal staff, they are using, some kind of ship system to. They have still been able to pay the full salaries to workers, even though some will stay in the house about a week without coming, and therefore in the month they only work for 2 weeks. Some employers have shown commitment; they've gone ahead and pay full salaries. So if the review that should come, Labour also look at it in one way or the other, because I will be the first also to admit that not all employers have been affected in a higher magnitude of the COVID. Some could manage, others could not. And then those who are managing, we are grateful to them, and I'll use this your platform to acknowledge that. But to a large extent, we need to have a rethinking as to how we organize ourselves in this era of this pandemic. The challenge now is we don't know when it's going to reboot again in Ghana, because in 2020, when we thought it was all gone, then to the ending part of December 2020, and then January, February, it struck again. And then look at the kind of death toll we recorded, challenges that came across. So we will, at this point, keep telling all workers everywhere that let's continue to observe the protocols the way it is and appreciate what employers are going through. And it's about time that employers also come out and share information. Let the workers know this is where we were before pandemic, this is where we are now, and this is what is possible. If this thing comes, the supposed expected agitation will get a natural, death, and there's no need for it at all. But where the employer is still sharing information as to what effect has this pandemic brought to the business, what size of the market share we have lost, how we are struggling to break even. These things we are encouraging employers also to share with the employees. If this is done, we will have such a great understanding as to what we are all sacrificing against the future. Because we know one day it's going to be well. And when it is well, employers should also appreciate that workers in this difficult time will sacrifice. And therefore, if there should be any compensation or anything to show appreciation for what we have done in these hard times, then workers will also be grateful.
Right. Now, Angel Carbonu of NAGRAT is of the view that when salaries are not increased in the light of increasing prices, that might become a trigger for corruption. How do you respond to that? Well,
I disagree with him a bit, because we are not in normal times. And like I said in my last bit, if the employer is sharing how the COVID has affected them, and I gave classical example. Now, in most institutions, because our offices were not charged to keep just a skeleton staff, but one office you have 8 people, and the room is not that accommodating enough with this corona infection. So employers say, 4 of you this week don't come to work, which is a cost to business. If these things are explained well, and workers themselves see that, look, the whole month I have worked for only 2 weeks, yet I'm taking 1 full month's salary. Okay, here workers will show appreciation and create the indulgence of every colleague that it's about time we all help to overcome this pandemic exercise. And then when things get normal, we'll be able to fly. But if in this abnormal time and the businesses themselves, are going down, and then we say, give us more in addition, then we don't want to salvage the situation. We want the businesses to fold up. I gave example that in 2018, we were out there pleading with government that the textile industry was virtually sinking. So some relief should be given. We had the VAT being written off for them for the next 3 years. We are out there now, but things have not improved. They are asking us, give us the relief still for us to continue. So workers at those places are not demanding that come, let's have full salary increase here and there. The issue now is every employer should tell his story as it was and as it is now and what the future holds for us. And I think every objective worker will appreciate the fact that, look, it's about time we all help to submerge out of this pandemic economic disaster, and then the future will be bright for all of us. It's more about education, leisure, information.
Right. I want to thank you very much for joining us for that conversation, and that, of course, includes you, Executive Secretary of the National Labour Commission.